Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining Dell Technologies and Redington session with Alex. We hope we will provide you all the information required. You can post all your questions in the Q&A button on the left and we will answer them at the end of the session. Uh, the topic for today is why DPS on VMware, and we have Muhammad Saif, the pre-sales consultant in Dell Technologies, who will be running throughout this session. Please note that after answering all your questions at the end of the session, we will run a short quiz and there will be three winners. Muhammad, over to you. You can start.
Thank you, Ragda. Good morning, everyone, our beloved customers and partners. This session today is basically focusing on Dell Technologies, data protection portfolio, and how we will be able to fulfill and make sure that we're fully supporting your transformation to VMware. And we're going to answer questions and make it much more clear about our DPS data protection solutions, specifically for VMware, if you know, or you might have had the chance to know exactly what our data protection solution offering from Dell. We will also be able to address any concerns you might have today. Throughout the session, please feel free to post your questions. It will be answered on spot, or at the end of the sessions, also we're going to open for a Q&A at the end. So what's Dell EMC and VMware relation? What exactly the circumstances around this? So basically, VMware is one of our major partners, and we have a back-to-back, engineering working together to make sure that compatibility and as long as you make sure transformation to the cloud journey, transformation to the virtualization aspects all are addressed by Dell EMC technologies, not only for data protection, but it comes into end to end. And in order to be able to address the VMware, we need to know exactly what kind of data we need to protect and why this data is required, this kind of protection. So first of all, data, for sure, it's the most valuable asset to any organization. Each and every organization run the business from the data that concludes customer information, customer relationship management, CRM databases, and transactions for such as retails and banking sectors, and even mid-range and high-end enterprise customers as well, considering the data is the most valuable asset of information. And as long as we grow, as long as the companies and organizations are adapting new customers, it makes also complexity of the data itself. Data is becoming bigger and bigger, and even the complexity of it is that it comes into adoption of multiple technologies that could be what we call a best of breed or traditional infrastructure, and also moving to virtualization or cloud or even hybrid cloud as well. So as long as we have this in mind, it's very complex in order to be able maintaining and managing the information as it grows. And keeping up with the data growth is a challenge as well, because you have a growth on the data, you would have another growth on the others. What I mean by others is basically the way you're going to protect this data, the way that you need to test and develop the applications to work on those data. And it's very crucial to be able to grow your business so that you need to make sure that adapting the technology and the data growth are maintained with the journey as well. Data is often disrupted across the edge. So the core and the cloud, when the data is scattered, it's difficult to manage, utilize, and also protect. And here it comes safeguarding the data. It's very crucial as well, so that you need to make sure that your data is safe, not only from data loss, it's also from distractions like cyber threats or cyber attacks. This is also one of the challenges that we've started seeing a few years ago, and it's even booming inside the country of Saudi, that we've heard about many attacks are targeting our footprint of organizations and so on. So all of that are making that what we call the business impact of the data. So we cannot afford to lose the data as long as we're running the business, right? It's basically the value of the data is going to increase and increase, and the cost of the data loss also might increase substantially. So without adapting the process and safeguard the data, the chances of creating a value is also diminished, because it's basically you grow, the data is growing as well. You need to make sure that you're protecting the data, you need to make sure that safeguarding the data, and that makes at the end the value of what we call a business value and impact. So as agreed, so the modern software-driven data centers has enabled and protected agility of the to the organizations. However, protecting VMware workloads and application and even the data inside those applications in the new paradigm is also more complex to present challenges that are not easy to meet by data protection solutions built for legacy, what we call the SAN architecture, for example, or maybe traditional way of protecting this data, right? So the challenges with this data is basically that the virtualization, the VM is growing, and even the growth of the virtualization is caused because you've got a new request to adapt a new technology, adapt a new application, spinning the new VMs is coming across, and this is for sure it's increasing the strength of the protection requirements, because it's not only about might not only the aspect of the within organization, but it might come from the government regulations as well that that you need to make sure that the most critical assets and information, the business data and so on, is going to be protected and secured. With this challenge in mind, it becomes another challenge that you need to be able to make it fast as possible. We have something called the protection window. It's the amount of time it takes to protect the data, and even the amount of time it takes to restore the data in case of, God forbid, a disaster or data loss, right? So we need to make sure that we are shrinking also the time window needed to protect the data by adapting whatever we call the new technology in order to do that. It's no wonder that the wave of change is sweeping across the IT infrastructure, and in order to shift from what you have today into software-defined data center or maybe cloud infrastructure, you need to adapt also the modernization and transformation as a journey, right? So from modernization perspective, it's simply we need to be able to simplify a bit the existing process, so that we're freeing up a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of money, and so that we can utilize them in some other aspects to grow, right? The second thing is that the change with this data protection becomes a part of the environment transformation, so that if we look into the journey from modernization to transformation, it's all about that we need to have the right people with the right process and the right technology. So it makes sure that automation exists for the backup process with a better technology. The transformation, we focus to make protection even automated, and this is how exactly it happened. So for modernization, we're just getting rid of what we call traditional, adapting new technology, make sure that we're freeing up resources and make it more simple, right? From the transformation perspective, we're just trying to make it automated, and this is not going to happen because we have to adapt, or we need to make sure that we have the right people, the right process, and the right technology as well in mind. So with the existing or with the legacy, approach and architecture to protect our workloads, to protect our VMs, it's basically a nightmare. We cannot grow, we cannot adapt to be able to make sure that we are adapting the journey, the growth of the spiral of the virtual machine addition or the new workloads addition and so on. I'm sure you've heard about, if you're a VMware admin or a backup admin or even the SAN admin, you've heard about the legacy technology of doing SAN and network-based solution to do VMware data protection. What it basically does is that you're relying on having connection to your data storage over a SAN network and then or over IP network, and then move those data into what we call the physical proxies. So from the physical proxy, you're doing the backups, right? So this is basically not going to be sufficient, especially when you are adapting new information or data. You make sure that you need to grow with the business, so you cannot. It's a challenge to be able to adapt this kind of connectivity and requirements to add adoption of the network and so on. So this is what we call the traditional model that provide automation and setting up the policies when the VM spine is off, right? So it's no automation as we speak in this case. It's not something that we say that it will take care of a new VM addition or VM deletion. Even the protection is not automated. You have to configure policies, and you have to make sure that you're not losing one of the VMs configured as we speak. The second thing is that we've started seeing a lot of adoption of technologies to simplify this, and the early attempts of this is basically what we call a combined software proxies and backup storage in a single appliance. So we've seen many vendors or many backup data protection vendors are proposing something like that. It's like an appliance that has everything embedded. And this is what we're seeing here in the right screen. We call it the traditional hardware and software bundle solution, right? So even though this approach solves some challenges, however, under this model, each application can only handle a limited number of virtual machines. So that each one of those appliances that you see underneath can protect a specific number of VMs. So even though if it's not utilized from resources perspective, you still need to add additional one if you grow with the VM spam as well. So the backup storage capacity, yes, might not be full, but you still need to add the new proxies, the new physical appliances to adopt with this. And underneath, if you don't see it, it's basically a massive network kind of requirements to be able to adapt this in mind. Those kind of appliances connect and communicate with each other with internal connectivity, and then they need to have a daisy chain networking underneath with what we call the interfaces for the production network as well. So it's basically a nightmare from agility perspective, from transformation perspective. It cannot help and sufficient you with the growth. In addition to that, it needs a lot of resources and with no automation. And this is what makes it important. Remember when you spoke about the transformation, it's made sure that we have to have automation. It doesn't make any sense that we're having the latest technology in the world, but it's not supporting us with the automation perspective. We have a lot of other actions to do with the current, with the current adoption of data and businesses and the growth that we start seeing. So what we can support and what Dell EMC will be able to address and this perspective is basically we've concerned it into simplifying the way of deployment. There is no need to have a lot of appliances to be able to protect your infrastructure. Either if it's not only VMs, might be VMs and other physical systems. Even those VMs might contain structured and unstructured databases and so on. So all of those will be maintained from a single pane of glass point of view, that from simplification that makes sure that we're simplifying to manage and scale our software-defined architecture for this VMware protection. So what exactly done is that basically it's an automation across the entire VMware protection stack. We have the VM backup policy, we have the data movers, proxies. All of those are part of the same traditional or the same backup infrastructure that you have. You can basically scale very easily without having to have another media server or another backup appliances. We call it a virtual proxy. The virtual proxy is basically a very small footprint appliance that's going to be deployed inside your VMware stack. And from this, you will be able to read backups based on block-based backups or change block tracking enabled. So it's boost optimized. It has a deduplication engine inside it. So it's never going to send data twice from this kind of VM or the VM stack to the backup appliance data domain system. It's best of class in terms of efficiency. So with this deduplication, it's going to use a less capacity of bandwidth required. So don't be afraid of saying, I was doing backups over SAN, now you're asking me to do backup over network. Trust me, it's even faster because of the deduplication and compression that we're enabling of boosting. It's optimizing efficiency of the network by up to 99% of the utilization. It's very fast and efficient to back up a VM with our data protection and make sure that even application and consistency also is tackled part of this as we speak. It has a very way to do with this architecture. It provides a very fast backup and recovery. So we're shrinking down the window. When it comes to backup, as I mentioned, we're doing a deduplication and compression from the source itself using or leveraging change block tracking. So we never send data twice. That makes we reduce the network and we reduce also the backup window. Even for recovery, we're still approaching the same technology of doing recovery. We're just recovering the changed blocks. We don't have to recover the entire VM to the VM stack. It's just a matter of seeing what exactly changed blocks and then will be recovered. There are multiple options and ways to do VM recovery, but in a nutshell, we can restore the VM with CPT or changed blocks, or even you can still mount the virtual machine from inside the backup storage, from inside data domain system without the need of restoring it over the wire. It's basically plugging and mounting the VMDK files or the VMDK desks of this specific VMs from the backup appliance directly to the VM infrastructure. But so this is what we call the automation. Automation is also one of the aspects here, because you just configure a policy, you just deploy proxies, and even the proxy itself, it's going to be automatically deployed. You don't have to deploy those virtual proxies. It will calculate the number of VMs, the bandwidths given, number of ESXs, number of VMDKs, and so on. It will see exactly how many proxies I need to deploy. Could be one, could be two, could be three. The system will be deploying those automatically. The VM protection as well is automated. So you've started configuring your backups today for a few number of VMs, and you found out that there's a new request for a few applications to be added. Just configure the VM from your own perspective, and it will be automatically backed up. The backup system or the backup data protection suite will be able to detect that you have a new VM added to the setup, so it will be started automatically doing and applying protection as per the policy configured. So define the process that's needed, define the policy that's needed, and the system will be able to simplify the way of managing this. And even from what we call the manageability perspective, it's very efficient, because you have the options, if you are a VMware admin, to manage the VM backups recovery from your vCenter, from your vSphere. You don't have to request access to the backup software. We call it a self-driven, that we're going to talk about it later today, but you still be able to, as a VMware admin, to configure the backups and perform recovery as per the policy defined. Or you're still, as a backup admin, could control this from your end as a backup software. So you can still also discover, manage, define the policies, play with it the way you want from VMware perspective. It's never been easy. It's never been automated. It's never been fast to perform and protect the VMware workloads. And this is the reason why we're saving network when it comes to deduplication. It's up to 98% of reduction when it comes to network utilization. It's up to 72x deduplication rate specifically for VMware. Remember when we spoke about the deduplication inside with utilizing the change block tracking? That's why the deduplication ratio is much, much more higher on VMware than the others, because we understand the bits, we understand the blocks of the VM data from the VMDKs, and then we're just comparing them with the entire VMs inside the stack. So if you have one of the blocks have been sent from one of the VMs, it's not going to be sent from of any others if it does, if it does have any similarity from blocking perspective. Deployment of the proxy, as I mentioned, it's automated, and it's less than 5 minutes to deploy. There's no need to acquire any software or hardware. It's just a matter of providing an IP address and host name for this, and it will be automatically deployed for you, right? It's very, very fast when it comes to backup and recoveries. With CPT specifically, you can just, if you have it already, I'm not sure if you might have Dell EMC data protection in place for VMware, but you can test it if you have it, or we can help you to test it with our labs as well. One of VMs start doing backup for the first time, it might take half an hour, an hour. The second time, it start immediately, decreasing the window. You can just back it up within minutes, within few minutes only. That makes it very, very fast. And keep in mind, I forgot to mention this. We're doing daily full for VMware. We call it forever incremental. Why forever incremental? Because we're just taking the blocks, the changed blocks, and just dump it to the backup appliance and rebuild what we call another full backup out of it. So yes, we're doing only changed backup, changed blocks for the backup. It looks like it's incremental because we're taking only the new blocks mentioned. But from the back end on the backup appliance, it's full on a daily basis. This is how it's fast. You have a full backup of your VM on a daily basis in a very fast manner. And this is shrinking down the backup time, the backup window. You didn't have to, backup window specifically with the amount of data. We need to be able to shrink it. The old days, we just have a few data capacity, backup requirements. I don't care about if it takes like 6 hours, 7 hours, right? But now you need to take care about this, trust me. You start seeing a tremendous growth of the data so that you cannot sustain by having more than maybe 6 hours. You cannot say like my backup window is 12 hours. This is a disaster. You need to be able to shrink this backup window as well. And this will be able to simplify the way you do data protection, backup and recovery in a very fast manner, efficiently. Automated is enabled. You're not going to be afraid of losing any single VM. In addition to that, storage consumptions as well is a concern. With the deduplication, when I'm saying 72x of deduplication ratio, it's not like 90% saving. No, it's like each 72 terabyte of data, it's saved on a single terabyte on the backup appliance. So you can imagine the huge saving of the backup storage of the backup appliance caused by VMware protection utilizing the change block tracking. And again, from manageability perspective, it's never been easy, right? You can, I understand that some of our beloved customers, they might have silos inside the organization. They might have like database admins. They might have VMware stack for production, another VMware stack for test and dev. So when this in mind, we can, we can solve these challenges by deploying what we call a data protection strategy for mission critical application and non-mission critical application as well. So if you talk about the size of the databases or the size of the mission critical apps, it might be, many of you guys might have this like maybe 20%, 30% of your workloads. It might be in terabytes or even petabytes, despite the fact that all of those are part of your infrastructure, but you need to make sure of having a better technology in order to able to isolate this from protection policy perspective. You can still able to manage to do this. You could define the different administrators, and each administrator will be able to manage his own, VM stack or his own mission critical app or non-mission critical app. And despite the fact that even if they are sharing the same I would say vCenter architecture or vCenter infrastructure, even if they are sharing the same data center, the same backup application and target, you can still do what we call silos or multi-tenancy for application protection, as we speak. There is no issue of having multiples, but the good thing about it is that there is no lack of centralization of the copy control and compliance. You can still manage and operate all of those from a single interface as a compliance perspective, while you're just giving a sort of a self-service maybe or multi-tenancy for application control. So you don't be afraid of, I have multiple environments, I have it here, I have it there, multiple systems. Each system needs to have his own portfolio of backup and requirements and configuration. All those will be addressed by a single backup solution as we speak, by the intelligent of data segregation, or what we call curating a multi-tenancy part of the solution with no lack of centralization for the copy control, right? So what I wanted to say here also is that it's a huge saving. We've started seeing many environments having different backup solutions for different setup. You don't have to do this. You can still have a single backup solution or a backup appliance for all the environments that you have to make sure that you are optimizing the cost, optimizing the saving that you have in place, right? So this is the transformation as we speak, and the solution is modernizing what we call the data protection for all of your database and mission critical and even non-critical applications. So it removes any barriers for T1 application running on the virtualization environment. It creates basically we could enable it by creating a direct enablement for the self-service for the applications. We don't want to spend much more time about the application because this session specifically for VMware, but our solution also is capable to do it for Oracle, for SQL, for SAP HANA, for many other application, for Exchange, for many other applications to enable the self-service. It's very fast and efficient. It takes out the barrier of having requirements of the backup software, and then you can still do it from your end as an admin, Oracle admin, SQL admin, VMware admin, SAP HANA, Exchange, DB2, whatever. You can still drive the backup, initiate the backup and recovery from your end without any barriers, by permission, of course. However, with this in mind, keep in mind that we need to control, we need to be able to report to know exactly how many storage consumptions do we have this data saved or not. We need to make sure about automation, reporting, all of those. We have a single IT control for this. Still, all of those reporting to the backup software by giving the metadata information needed. So you still be able to control as a backup admin or infrastructure admin how much data consumption and how much data is being driven from this specific VM or this specific Oracle database, right? So the solution is solving the technical and operational challenge. It's a one elegant architecture that addresses both of those in mind. Self-service enabled. It's very fast and efficient because it takes the barriers of having a control. However, it's still managed and controlled from a single backup management environment software. From governance perspective, the service level of objective also is enforced because it's controlled by a policy from the backup server. Remember, right? You still have to control this from policy perspective. So all of those challenges are solved with the software. One of the other aspects as well we've started seeing, I'm not sure if you heard about the Amazon announcement that was like yesterday, that you can have something like Azure Stack on-premise. You can have Amazon also Stack on-premise as well. So with this, we've been one of the early vendors to adopt the technology to be able to protect the VM even on Amazon, on the cloud. You could create VMware on Amazon. This is one of the aspects. You could have a VMware stack on Amazon on the cloud, or even natively on the cloud as well. So despite any of those, you will be able still to protect your workloads, even from premise to the cloud, by doing a replication and a deduplication format. Or you could have the stretched vCenter maybe to protect workloads here and there with a single backup software. You could, with our solution, there's a flexibility to deploy what we call a virtual edition of our I would say backup appliance and software even inside Amazon Cloud. So with this in mind, you can have multiple hybrid cloud architecture. You could have VMware on cloud with leveraging all of the configuration technologies aspects that we've discussed: deduplication, compression, agility, control, self-service. All of the automation, all of those are already managed with the deduplication also that we've given for VMware specifically. You can have it as a lower cost to protect. You don't have to spend much money on provisioning a virtual machine on Amazon to do your backups because of storage concerns. Because of deduplication, as we speak, you can just deploy the data domain virtual edition and it's already available in the marketplace, by the way. So you can just deploy it and have an integration between what we have on-prem, replicate the data in a deduplication format from on-prem to the cloud, or vice versa. Some other customers would need to have protection on the cloud and on-prem as well. So all of those aspects will be maintained and managed from what we call an enterprise-grade data protection that leverage the same deduplication, the same data protection solution for VMware, either on-premise or on the cloud, right? I just wanted to emphasize that the VMware on cloud for AWS is not complex at all. As I mentioned, it's very robust because it's like a replica from what you have on ground. Again, if you have Amazon subscription, you just go and search on the marketplace for DDVE or the Dell EMC Data Domain Virtual Edition. You can search on the DPS, you can search on Networker and Avamar. It's already inside the marketplace. You can just download them and deploy them, or if you have VMware on Amazon, you can just go to support.emc.com and then you can download the virtual edition of VMware, the Networker Virtual Edition, and deploy it natively on VMware on Amazon, right? Okay, so now so we need to see exactly what I mentioned earlier, that we're going to talk about why DPS for VMware. So we need to tell you more about DPS. What's DPS and what exactly it does if you're not aware of, right? So DPS stands for the Data Protection Solutions, and it's basically your Data Protection Suite, and it's basically a suite of product that able to provide not only backup and recovery, it's going to provide the entire data protection requirements that you have. So Dell EMC Data Protection Suite provides an enterprise organization industry leading data protection through a comprehensive set of features, I would say, right? So whether your data protection environment is rich with a mission critical applications or maybe fully virtualized, you move into the cloud, you might have multiple hybrid clouds, you might have application silos that we've tackled as well, right? So different and many different use cases, DPS suite will be able to offer a single solution that's designed to meet all of those specific needs of the business. Again, it's not only a backup product, it's a complete suite of data protection. So if you can see here, it's basically, I would say start by doing backup and recovery. Yes, backup and recovery is most important aspect here. So it's a software that deliver industry-leading data protection for a variety of an enterprise organization at speak we have them. It's capable of leveraging the most technology to protect 100% of your workloads, depending on whenever it is. Is it like on premise or on the cloud or hybrid and so on, mission critical applications or not, right? And all of those use cases are managed from a single pane of glass interface. Despite if it's like self-driven, if it's like self-managed service, as we talked about as well. So you still can monitor and manage all of your portfolio, all of your backup use cases from a single pane of glass interface. We call it the Data Protection Center. It's an HTML5 interface that, as you can see here, providing a very nice dashboard, a very nice reporting. It's a discovery. You can still perform a discovery, automation, policy management, reporting, many features that's already embedded in a single pane of glass interface from Data Protection Suite. It's not only, again, data protection only. You can still do part of the coverage, something called a disaster, I would say, recovery solution part of this. It's basically a solution that targets DR requirements that you wish to advantage from flexibility and agility to deliver to the cloud. So from the same solution, you can leverage a cloud subscription on Amazon, for example, to build a disaster recovery with no need for infrastructure. I would speak about this, but in a nutshell, it's basically you can replicate the virtual machine backup from what we call a backup on-premise to a cloud instance with no need of VMware on the cloud, for example. I'll talk about this, right? So it's providing you a disaster recovery agility with no disaster recovery infrastructure requirements. It's very efficient, and so it's very fast to be able to save specific workloads, specific VMs that you've seen them as mission critical ones, to protect against any kind of a disaster that might happen. One of the other also solutions covered with the Data Protection Suite is a continuous replication. It's basically it offers any point of time recovery for an efficient replication to the cloud. Or another side, we have something called Recover Point for VM. It's part of Data Protection Suite. It provides you a continuous real-time protection for the virtual machines, either to the cloud or to another data center, or even locally. So it's basically somehow like a video camera that you're taking a video shot, filming or something, and you need to rewind back a few seconds. This is exactly how replication for continuous replication works. You can rewind back a few seconds for this VMs and revert it back to and enable it for production. All of those are managed by a single centralized monitoring and management interface. It's providing you more visibility and monitoring management across the Data Protection Suite portfolio and family. Even the appliances as well as part of this. And last but not least, as I mentioned, cyber attacks. Cyber recovery also is one of the aspects. It's a last line of defense, protection against cyber threats. We also one of the vendors, I would say a unique vendor that provide what we call a true air gap to be able to protect against cyber threats. We'll also talk about this, right? So just to know more about the portfolio, I would categorize them in three different aspects. We have the software piece, we have the hardware piece. They could work together, software writing to hardware. So software is Data Protection Suite, Power Protect software, and the hardware is the Power Protect data domain appliance. It could be physical appliance or even a virtual appliance on, as I mentioned, on VMware or on Amazon or Azure, on cloud or whatever. And the aspect, the other one is what we call a converged. So we could have both software and hardware into a single appliance as a converged solution. And from this, we have what we call the integrated data protection appliance, and also the PowerProtect X400 appliance. So we will focus today on the data protection suite. The appliances is something that we can talk just a little bit about them later, but we will mainly focus on the data protection suite as a capability to protect and provide the protection for VMware. So as we discussed earlier, the architecture that we have for our DPS is a unique value that enables us to provide the ideal data protection for VMware workloads. So it's basically it's a leading automation, scalability, efficiency, and performance by providing what we call the virtual proxies. There's no complexity. There is no requirements of networking. There's no requirements to add additional storage for VMware protection. There is no barriers. There's no limits of the number of VMs and so on. There is no issues at all because of this architecture. It's very, very simple, and it's unique that we provide in order to be able to simplify the efficiency. So one of the unique also solutions that we say that we can still, as I mentioned, one of the recoverability aspects we stated is that we can enable what we call an instant access to just mount the virtual machine instead of recovering. So you just utilizing what we call instant access features by our software, so that it gives an ability to power up to 64 virtual machines directly using the protection copy. There is no need to restore the data. You can just power it immediately. It will be up and running for application interaction, transactions, and so on. And meanwhile, it's up and running for the customers or for the end user. You can do storage vMotion to move this VM from the backup storage to the VMDK, or sorry, to the VM stack, as we speak. So it's an enhanced way of doing this, because our backup appliance has what we call a data cache that results in a high random I/O performance for instant access or instant restore. So it's basically a flash-enabled data protection appliance that helps to approach the required I/O performance for an instant access, and also it increases up to 60,000 IOPS for instance access for those specific VMs. So in a nutshell, you can backup the data in an instant access way. You can restore with an instant access by just mounting the VM from the backup storage, and those VMs will be mounted on an SSD drive's flash to provide you with the IOPS requirements. So you could rely on this for a very, very, very fast and agile recovery, so that there's no need to wait for hours to restore a single VM. Just restore it and mount it from the backup appliance, and then it's up and running. There are very so many features for VMware, and it's basically very, very optimized for VMware, right? So data protection suite is for VMware is optimized in terms of doing and agility when it comes to backup and recovery. So it provides a variety of options, including what we call a guest level and image level backups. Guest level backup is basically dealing with the guest OS. The image level is taking an image with the snapshots with the CPT enabled to back up those kind of virtual machine. It's very tight when it comes to integration with VMware. To provide what we call an easy way of managing backup and recovery, even through native VMware interfaces or from backup admin perspective. So self-service is enabling whenever you are from VMware, if it's like a vSphere, vCloud Director, vRealize automation, vRealize operation as well is covered with this. So whenever you still can manage backup and recovery for VMware workloads, right? The other thing is that with automation, the proxy is needed to adopt the technology. It's basically deployment is very automated when it comes to I would say load balancing. Remember when we spoke about the policy? Just configure the policy and let it go. It will be able to manage everything from end to end by the policy configured, right? And instant access also is one of the unique features. As we spoke, you just can mount the VM's protection from VMware. Yes, one of the things also to mention about automation is that we enable a dynamic policies to ensure that each and every VM is automatically inherited in a proper policy configuration. So there is no need to be worried about any VM loss when it comes to data protection. Last but not least, with a comprehensive solution that I would say the VMs the VM is going to be protected in both ways, image level and guest level, change block tracking enabled. And with Data Protection Suite, you have this kind of industry-leading data protection for the VMware environment. A lot of other features to tell about from technical perspective, but it's basically built for the future. You don't have to have something today and change something change in your infrastructure and then request for some other adoption of the technology. If you start small today and you've decided to go bigger, change your architecture for VMware, we still gonna be able to support you. So um, so it's an industry-leading integration for vSphere, and also empowers the VM admins to initiate backups, to have a full control with the governance already managed by the backup and infrastructure administrator, as we spoke, right? Now, this is what you might have today. You might go in the future to do vRealize automation, right? So vRealize automation as well, we can empower self-service for this. We can increase automation and cloud management as well. It's an orchestration layer that's there to make things easy from deployment of VMs perspective. We still can adopt with this, right? So we have our blueprints and architecture based on uh, and it's already designed specifically for vRealize automation in this case. It's supported you also with the journey to the cloud. So even if you if you need to extend your VMware coverage to VMware on cloud, it's basically one of our capability as well, so that you can define the data center you want, either cloud or hybrid, and then we can protect those VMware workload on the cloud uh, either natively if you decided to do it VMware, either natively if you decided to do it just cloud adoptions, or if it's VMware on the cloud. Mostly, 100% we're capable to deliver both at the same time. If you have multi-cloud strategy, if you have hybrid cloud strategy, on-prem, on cloud, it's a single interface that could be able to manage all of those, from a single pane of glass interface, either on-prem, on the cloud, or even hybrid as we speak. So one of the other aspects I wanted to talk about today is the continuous replication, because never there's no other vendor in the market will be able to do it the same way we do. It's basically part of the data protection suite coverage that include the software to do a continuous replication in a point of time fashion, so that you'll be able to build this for on-premise environment, or replicating to another disaster recovery on a sync and async replication as well. There is no need to adopt the hardware. It's basically a plugin to be deployed on the VMware ESXs and deploy a proxy on the VMware stack, so that it will be able to provide a full integration with vCenter, right? It enables the vCenter admin to manage the data protection from vCenter, and it includes also the ability to restore any kind of independent application in a consistent fashion. It's an application consistent way of doing continuous replication from what you have on premise for VMware to the cloud, or to any other data center, or even locally. It's basically a way to replicate based on an I/O. It's not taken a snapshot as snapshot, but it's just monitoring the I/O and split it into two different targets: the basic target, which is the default one that you have on-prem, and then the secondary target, it could be on-prem or the cloud or another data center as well. The continuous replication by recover point is basically something that you need to adopt to enrich your capability for continuous replication, for business continuity. There is no afraid of losing, any kind of data aspect. It's replicated continuously by sync and async from a data center to another, or to the cloud, so that you can revert back to any point of time needed for this. Even it's from layer 2 and layer 3, it is supported from the network. If you have some kind of changes on the network layer 2 and layer 3 from production to DR, it still could be supported. You can configure the policy to replicate specific bundles of VM. We call it a consistency group, so that there is no afraid of having consistency issue for a certain application workloads as well. In addition to that, it's automated, so you can just power up this kind of virtual machine in case of, God forbid, a disaster from the other side with even different IP address if it's like layer 2, layer 3, as I mentioned earlier. So it's an integrated way of doing replication continuously for VMware. It's integrated with VMware on cloud. It's integrated with even native AWS, so you can replicate the VMs from on-prem to a cloud as a disaster copy from from single pane of glass from the normal vCenter that you have. There's no need to adopt a new training for how to do it. It's basically part of a plugin to be deployed inside the vCenter. All the VM admin will be able to leverage access to this as required permission, and then they can deliver it the way you want. So the other aspect as well that I wanted to tackle today is that Dell EMC is one of the leaders to offer the hybrid converged infrastructure. And it's not only from storage perspective, it's also from data protection perspective. So one of the other portfolio that I mentioned earlier today is that we are capable to do both backup software and backup hardware in a single appliance in an integrated fashion. So that's it's optimized to deliver you with a comprehensive data protection solution that's integrated to cover 100% of your workloads. The solution as well is extended to cover what we call a multiple use cases. So from this, within the same solution, you're capable to deliver a long-term retention of your data. If you have long-term retention requirements, you can just configure the policy natively, seamless by the software, so that it can adopt the cloud integration that you have, either if it's on-prem cloud or public cloud, to shift and move the data out of the primary storage and keep it for long-term retention on the cloud. The same appliance also will be capable to deliver the disaster recovery approach. There's no need to have an infrastructure at any sites. It's going to natively integrate with Amazon, now with Azure, to replicate your workloads on a VM format. In case of a disaster happened to this VM, you can just mount this VM from the cloud, or you can just basically pull it back and revert it back to be used on premise from the cloud. If you decided to work through the VMware workloads on the cloud, you build VMware on Amazon, for example, it's never easy. It's basically the same way that you have it on production. It's going to be 100% the same way that you have it on-prem, right? One of the things that I wanted to stress more on this is the disaster recovery, because you might have an intention to do disaster recovery, but you have a shortened resources to build a disaster recovery site, right? This is one of the cases, and this is basically an excellent resolution for this. So we understand that disaster recovery, first of all, it's essential for application that cannot afford it on time, right? And you might also not able to afford the disaster recovery site, so the DR can be costly in this case, and it requires a lot of configuration for mission critical applications and so on. Dell EMC Data Protection Suite can offer a very cost-effective disaster recovery on Amazon or on Azure or even on VMware. So we can leverage technology to do a cloud replication, or a replication from what you have today to the cloud instance. If it's Amazon, if it's Azure, if it's VMware on Amazon as well, natively you will be able to do a plan to build a consistency group to replicate the specific number of VMs with a consistently manner, like which one has to replicate first and second to be able to maintain this consistency level. And it's very efficient because it supports what we call the multiple cloud, multiple footprints that you have and it eliminates the need of a DR cost. So imagine that you don't have any DR, but you still could have a protection of your VM to a cloud. So that if you lose one of the VMs, or if you lose the multiple VMs part of the consistency group, you can direct the access of those VMs to the cloud, or you can fail over and fail back by very simple, way of doing multiple clicks. To be able to either to fail over or fail back from the cloud in this case. As I mentioned again, there's no need to do cloud infrastructure. You can just rely on an Amazon subscription or Azure subscription to do this. You might need it even for testing as well. There is no test bed on your setup. You can simplify this by just replicate it to the cloud and test it over there. And from orchestration perspective, again, it's end to end. There is no need to have another software, another access, and another learning curve to adopt this technology. It's within the same DPS suite. You still be able to do it, and it's very seamless as well. Just configure the policy. You specify the group. You specify the number of VMs. You specify the time frame to do that, and it will be done automatically. And then you're gonna get the reports, right? Never been easy as we speak. So let's sum up what exactly capabilities of VMware. So there is a tremendous features could be covered on VMware specifically. The deduplication and compression, the forever incremental translated into full, the integration with the multiple offerings from VMware. Either you start small, you're growing big, you still have the same license to cover you with the journey. From performance and scalability as well, it's never been easy. From orchestration, virtualized automation, vCloud Director as well, it's part of the coverage. We have an embedded, as I mentioned, blueprints to be covered within this. Just configure whatever you want from automation perspective on the virtualized or vCloud, and then it will be adapted to pick the policy, and underneath the backup software will be able to take care of this automatically with the policy configured. And this is the real mean of the transformation. So we've automated everything from data protection perspective for VMware. There is no worry about losing any data. There's no worry about, just configure the policy, make sure that it's translating the business need that you have, and then it's never been easy as before. With those in mind, you can move to the cloud. You can do continuous replication with the async and sync by recover point. You can replicate this for disaster recovery purpose, or you could have it as a long-term retention. A lot of features will be able to be covered with the VMware integration as we speak, right? And it removes the complexity. Remember when we spoke about the transformation journey, data growth and fake, a lack of control and a lot of applications and workloads. So it's a 4 simple ways that we've managed to do this. So first of all, we simplified the way we're integrating by the offering as well. So it's a single interface to manage the full stack of VMware, a single offering to manage every single feature of VMware to be covered within this. There's no need to adopt multiple softwares and multiple licenses to be able to cover this. The second thing is that, we help to prepare you to scale as well. So you can adopt on-prem and then move to the cloud. It's a multi-dimensional scale solution that allows you to invest the way you want, right? You have the software now, you have on-prem, and then you've decided to move to the cloud. The software also will be able to cover you on the cloud. There's no additional investment needed from software perspective in this case. So we helped you to remove any barrier to grow with whatever you want. The third way of doing this is basically we're empowering the owners, the data owners themselves, to take care about their data. There is no one, trust me, there is no one is going to be more keen on his data than the admin himself. So you don't have to be bothered and afraid of losing data, and even blamed if you're a backup admin of losing single data. You can just provide the application admins and empower them to do the protection automated with the routine process that you want, and it's going to be very streamlined protection because it's defended against human error, because you're just leaving him to control this. And in addition to that, you can do, and this is the final one, you can simplify and bringing all of the governance in the world to help you to protect. So you'll be able to leverage the self-service with the IT governance in place. Everything, every backup, every system will be able to report, so that you could manage the SLOs and maintain whatever regulatory requirements that you have. It's really a challenge. Uh, the data growth is very challenges, and the data protection nowadays is required. Specifically with the COVID-19 pandemic that we have today, we're no more having access as before. We need to make sure that we are protecting the data. So this is one of the real challenges as well. We need to simplify a way of doing access to it. We don't have the flexibility to meet the people as before. Yes, it's remotely there, but keep in mind that you still need to empower people to do things their own, while you as an infrastructure admin or backup admin could still monitor and have the full governance when it comes to single pane of glass monitoring and managing for the infrastructure that you have. The other thing that I wanted to emphasize, remember when we talked about the security of the data, right? Security is not only data protection. Security is a way to be able to assure and confirm that there is no. I mean, you're having a resiliency required from cyber issues. Your cyber resiliency enabled. You can recover from a cyber attack, and despite all of the features, all of the security measurements, all of the the aspects and consequences that could be taken to protect against a cyber threat, there is still a risk of losing the data, because uh, you know simply anyone could be able to open an email that has a malware attached, that's phishing link inside it, and then the drop will be just immediately inside. Because uh, if we have the full flexibility to report against security issues, against cyber threats, it's not going to be a threat, because we know exactly what's going on. But the only way to protect against cyber threats is to have your data secured offline and with no management path. And this is one of the unique features as well that we're covering part of our solution. So the way we're doing it is that we're offering a full support of what we call the cyber recovery solution, that builds an air gap between two different systems, building an air gap between the production network and what we call a vault data domain setup, or a vault appliance. So we're synchronizing the data from production to a vault in a back-to-back manner. And this synchronization does not allow any management path. It's basically like very hard and secured and powerful to make sure that that there's no management path at all. Even if there is a malware is going to be transferred over the wire, the data domain appliance is keeping data in a dormant format. Data is not executable in this case. Retention lock is applied. We're having multiple immutable copies to revert. In addition to that, does not have any management path to the production. No one will be able to leverage access from production to be able to do this. So, and it's very fast when it comes to recoverability as well. So data domain is known as one of the engines that provides multiple sessions with multiple interfaces, instant access for the VMs, so that you can bring up your data center in a very shortened manner in case of a disaster. It's a very simple to manage, because it does not require the intensive policy. It knows exactly what kind of data classification that we're setting on production, and then it will classify the business critical applications needs for this. We can even decide that not all of our data needed for cyber protection. We can just specify a few of them that we've seen that those are the most critical, mission critical apps that we cannot survive if losing them in case of cyber attack. Similarly to what you do on the DR side. So with all of those in mind, we consider Dell EMC data protection for VMware specifically. It's number one, right? Because of the modernization that we support, the automation that we give in, help you in the transformation journey, and I would say also the capability of keep the compliance in place. This is categorizing Dell EMC as number one in as a company in data protection for VMware, right? So it's never been easy to consider VMware from modernization perspective. It's basically ensure that your entire comprehensive VMware environment is protected against cyber threats. It's very easy of number of applications. There is no wonder of having multiple setup, multiple applications. Feel free to increase because we have this already in place. Scalability and agility also one of the aspects. There is no need to deploy hardware or software to be able to protect your VMware workloads. It's automatically by proxy deployment. There's no need to have additional network, additional interfaces, nothing. It's basically integrated 100% with your VM infrastructure the way you want it, right? And it's very low when it comes to cost because we're doing either if it's going to do it on the cloud or if you're going to do it on-prem with deduplication and compression, we can manage the TCO that you want to save the amount of data that you want as well. Right, high performance because of deduplication and compression, because of an instant access, a lot of other features that there's no time to tackle about them today, but it's basically performance is a concern. The backup appliance, the software, the deduplication, the compression, the technique of doing the backup, the architectures, all of those are elements that helps a lot to assure that we are providing our customers a high performance for backup and recovery, and specifically for VMware. And despite the architecture you have it today, if you decided to have it on the cloud, if you decided to have it on-prem, it's fully supported. Just software will be able to cover 100% of the workloads, 100% of the use cases of VMware, even extending this to long-term retention, to cloud disaster recovery, or to native protection inside the cloud. And what I'm trying to say about native protection, either if it's workloads on the cloud or even application that was built on the cloud. So this is basically, again, delivering the SLO that you needed for data protection in general, right? Despite where you are, despite where do you want to go, we're 100% capable to satisfy the need of data protection requirements for VMware. And this is concludes my my slide presentation today. Hopefully you find it fruitful. And it's time now for Q&A.
Thank you, Ashraf.
Thank you
So thank you all the
thank you
partners. Thank you
everyone. وكل عام وانتم بخير و stay safe guys. Take care.
Thank you,
Ashraf.
everyone. Have a nice day.